Welcome back to Psychology of Peace Building. Last week, I started to briefly introduce the influence of culture. This week, I want to introduce that we all have different approaches to conflict and peace building. That's the nature of our world. So it's this fascinating adventure getting to know the different approaches that we have, that people have. Now, I'll focus on gender today. The research shows that generally men have been trained to be aggressors, to be competitive, to be win-lose, create sometimes violent conflict people, right? While women, now I'm talking to you as the Women's World Cup is happening, and certainly this is all changing. So please don't hear this as carved in stone. It is constantly dynamic and changing. But historically, at least in the United States, women have been accommodators, pleasers, people pleasers, trying to build peace for everyone else and not taking care of themselves, not respecting themselves or asserting themselves. You might also call women avoiders, which most human beings in the world actually share that. They would rather avoid conflict than embrace it. But freezing and becoming paralyzed by tension and conflict is also something that women commonly show and report. So we have different approaches. I have been working with many different cultures, and I have a cultural assessment that my clients and students have helped me create that actually breaks this down into how we communicate, how we make decisions, how we share power, how we relate to gender, men and women, all of it. So there's a lot to really explore, but this is an introductory course. Let me talk about conflict can be critically necessary and productive as well as destructive. While my model that I introduced last week focuses on destructive, potentially violent conflict, avoidance of conflict plays a very powerful role in creating toxic, unhealthy conditions and even destructive violent conflict, because we're not engaging with conflict in healthy ways. So it's important to realize that sometimes we need to stand up, speak the truth, assert ourselves, right? Okay. Coordinated management of meaning is also from communications research, and it describes our collective frames, our collective meaning, how we view the world, right? And what coordinated management of meaning means is that if we share the same approaches to conflict, if we share the same frames in identifying conflict and communicating, we're able to easily coordinate understanding peace building. Let me use indigenous cultures as a good example. Edward Hall was a very famous anthropologist who studied the Navajo Nation in Arizona. I don't know if any of you are Navajo or you know any Navajo, but what he discovered is that many of those people did not need to verbally, openly communicate their expectations with each other because they had a deep, silent understanding of their culture, and it did not need to be talked about. Now, the United States is the opposite of the Navajo here. We do not coordinate management of meaning very easily because we're from how many different cultures? That's the whole nature of the United States of America, though we may have to get rid of united in the future. We're definitely not united at the moment. But we're so many different cultures, and confrontation episodes describes clashing, misunderstanding, conflict, because we have these different expectations and approaches to conflict. Okay. Now, before I end today, I also want to talk about a couple of different models of how academics and scholars look at conflict. Tit for tat, you all understand tit for tat, aggressor, defender, you hurt me, I hurt you approach to conflict, the eternal, revenge cycle that explains so many wars. Oh my goodness, if we could just get rid of male honor and the need for revenge, we would have a much more peaceful world. But that's an aggressor, defender, tit for tat model. Very simple. So you give me kindness, I give you kindness, right? Reciprocity. The spiral escalation model is the more complicated model that I will be introducing throughout this course. But these are just two models. I'm going to end this lecture and be giving you another lecture this week to explain a third.